Dr. Alejandro Marangoni is a professor at the University of Guelph, and he was recently appointed to the Order of Canada for his work with organic chemistry and specifically his research on trans fats and saturated fats. Dr. Marangoni, thank you so much for joining us. Congratulations. What was that moment like when you found out about this honor?
Yeah, it was a funny, well, thank you very much. And yes, it was a funny moment in the lab. I was working with my students, completely unaware of what was happening. And I received a phone call that said from the Governor General of Canada. And at the moment, I almost blocked the call because I thought it was a spam call from, we have these spams that come from the Canada Revenue Agency or from the border services that try to trick you into giving them money. I almost blocked it and reported it, and then I saw this is a little bit different. So I answered it, and it was a congratulatory call from the Governor General telling me I had been appointed as an officer of the Order of Canada, which was completely unexpected.
And it was very recent. Have you had the chance to go to Ottawa to receive the Order of Canada already?
No. They informed me and I had to be quiet for 2 months. Then they made the official announcement, and they recently contacted me because they're going to have the event in Rideau Hall during this year, but they have a backlog because of COVID for 2020 and 2021. So maybe by the end of the year, we'll have our ceremony where the Governor General gives us our little medal in Ottawa, which should be really nice.
And to talk about the work that earned you this recognition, I mean, people are finally asking, what is in my food? What's on the back of this nutrition label? Why is it so important then to investigate and learn more about trans fats, saturated fats, and seek alternatives?
That's an excellent question. And I think we need to be aware of what we eat, because a lot of the foods if we rely a lot on eating out or a fast food place or a restaurant, remember, they're making their food to be indulgent. That's a really nice word, indulgent. So they make them extra delicious, extra salt, extra fat, extra calories to make you come back and really want to eat all these delicious things. But if you eat like that every day or close to every day, you're probably eating too many things that are not too good for you. So it's important to know what's on the label, how much saturated fat you eat. For example, the area that I work on, they recommend not to eat more than 20 grams of saturated fat a day. And if you have maybe a caramel bar covered in chocolate and you have 2 of these pieces, you're already up to 15. And you haven't even eaten your meat or your cheese. Cheese is very high in saturated fat. So it all adds up. So I think it's very important to know if you have any hydrogenated trans fat, if you have saturated fat, and if you have reached that limit, which is very easy to reach, then it's better to start eating other types of fat until you get to your daily requirement of 50-60 grams of fat per day. And that's a lot of the work that we've been doing, is try to transform liquid oils to have the same function as the solid fat, but without all the negative health aspects of it.
Or do you think that in the future we will be able to go to a supermarket and buy a food product that is not only healthier and more sustainable, but also profitable?
Oh, another very good question. And you said sustainable, and that's the new thing these days as well. People are concerned about their health, but they're also health of the world and the environment. So they do not want to eat something that is more healthy, but it destroys biodiversity of the Amazon forest, right? For example. So that's another challenge, is to do that. And so that's one of the reasons that palm oil has become less popular, because of the destruction of the forest in Southeast Asia and the loss of biodiversity. But that problem also comes with coconut oil, and coconut oil is the fat of choice of all the plant-based foods these days. You see everything in milk and cheese, in the meat analogs, they all have coconut oil. So at one point we will have to ask a question, is that very sustainable or not? And coconut oil also is high in saturated fat. There's saturated fats, there's different types of saturated fats, but in general, what the doctors tell us, if you have a high cholesterol level above a certain level, you shouldn't be eating too many saturated fats, because they're very hypercholesteremic, meaning you eat a lot of saturated fats, your cholesterol levels in your blood are going to go up. And so restricting that is not a bad idea if you want to keep in the healthy side. And besides, you shouldn't be eating too much fat, because that's too many calories.
Now, the food industry is, at the end of the day, a business. They do need to fulfill the basic need of food, but they also want to make money. So I want to know, how great has the reception been from different manufacturers, from the food industry, in terms of implementing these new technologies and these new ideas? Can we go to a supermarket right now and see some of the work that you have done?
Well, one of my technologies has been used in Europe since 2011 to make a confectionery, and they cannot tell the difference. The consumers cannot tell the difference. And luckily, the price is not too much higher than, unfortunately, we have to compare ourselves to palm oil, the cheapest fat in the world. So you're totally right. What would be the only incentive for a big multinational corporation to do such a thing is if consumer demands it. If the consumer demands it, the industry will supply it. But if the consumer doesn't demand it, they'll usually want to go for the cheapest fat. So it's an excellent question. We need more, like, less expensive solutions to do that. We have some of those solutions at hand, but they always tend to be a little bit higher than the baseline, which is palm oil. I think we need to pay, if we really might want to make a difference, is the consumer has to speak by the dollars they spend, the products they buy, and also we need to start assigning the real cost to some of these products. It is hard for me to understand how 1 kilogram of palm oil can be as low as $1, $1.20 a kilo when it's grown on the other side of the world, and then it has to be transported. We're not really paying for the true cost.
And it is the consumer's responsibilities, but do you think that it is also a bit of a responsibility on the government? I mean, they have 20 minutes a day exercise, stay 6 feet apart, wear your mask, different strategies and different messages that they're constantly pushing. Do you think it's important for them to also focus on the importance of healthy eating and on the importance of avoiding certain types of foods?
That's interesting, whether the government should get involved. I think you need to have, I think it is, but if you actually look at the Canadian Heart and Stroke Foundation sites, and if you go there, they have some very reasonable advice of what you should do. But yes, they haven't promoted in terms of marketing a greater health. Maybe they should, because a population that eats better and does a little bit of exercise and doesn't do excesses will be healthier, and then the healthcare system, and in general, you want to have a healthier population. It'll be less expensive also to deal with all these maladies when eventually people get sick from them. Diabetic people, heart conditions, cancer, that's really expensive as well. So if I was the government, I would be promoting that a little bit more, instead of spending more and more money in the healthcare system, which means more and more taxes, which means less money to have fun. And all we need to do is just to promote healthier eating. But let me say it again. I mean, it has to be healthy and delicious too, because we're not going to eat bad food. So that's a lot of what we're trying to do as well, is creating healthy alternatives that still have that motivate people to eat.
Now, this recognition from the Governor General of Canada is a huge moment in your career, but in the future, looking forward, what is one change or one thing that you want to see implemented in the food industry? Like, what would you want your legacy to be?
Well, we have really transformed because of our technologies like fats and oils all over the world. And there's people who use our technologies, the technologies we develop here, everywhere. But right now, we're working on the next generation plant-based cheeses, and the next generation, and with companies on the next generation meat analogs. And we hope to leave behind really an alternative to the animal-based foods, in foods that are inexpensive, equally good. And think about this: the food and agriculture produces more greenhouse gas emissions than the whole oil and gas industry. So, an engineer that worked for Tesla, that works on the greatest new electric battery, and then goes for lunch and has a big steak, has obliterated his work because of that. You have not solved the problem, you have made it worse. So all of us have such a huge influence on the health of the planet. I'm an outdoors person, and I've seen the changes that has happened to our environment over 20 years. And we see it every year, how the glaciers are melting, pollution goes up. And I really have recently felt an urgency to try to help stop this from happening. And I really think food choices are, life choices as well, but food choices are a huge part of that. And if we can all do our part, so I would like to be creating the big categories of foods that people consume that are plant-based instead of animal-based, and maybe that will help a little bit to slow down environmental change.
And as Latinos and also European immigrants that make up such a large population of Canada, a lot of our diets are primarily meat-based, poultry-based, cheeses, like you were mentioning, fats. what do you think we could do? What changes, alternatives? You mentioned coconut oil a bit at the beginning. Are there already options on the market that we could use to hopefully, contribute to the sustainability side of things?
Um, Unfortunately, I have to admit that a lot of the plant-based cheeses out there at this moment are not very good. They're not very good, and they're not high in protein either. If you notice, they're not really the equivalent of a cheese. So I still consume cheese because even though we have developed the technology, I think that in the next 2 years you will start to see these products out there. So it's not the consumer's fault. I mean, if the product is horrible, nobody's going to eat it. And a lot of the meat analogs are not really like meat, but the Beyond Meat has done a good job. An Impossible Burger, I don't see that much difference between an animal-based hamburger, a commercial one, and maybe the one you make at home is better, but the commercial one and the plant-based one. So yeah, I think next time you go for a fast food restaurant, eat a Beyond Meat burger, that will go a long way. And hopefully in the next 2 years, if you see some good plant-based product, give it a chance. Don't be negative about it. Give it a chance. And I found some really nice milks, and that are really a good option for me to replace the animal-based ones. So I think as consumers, give it a chance. And if you change your diet, you'll be surprised. You'll be surprised, even a little bit. You'll be surprised how much of a positive impact you can make to the environment.
Amazing. Well, Dr. Marangoni, thank you so much for joining us. And once again, huge congratulations.
Thank you very much.